Thank you, Amy. Thank you very much. Very excited to have this panel, Infrastructure as a Code. Good morning, everybody. We have a number of esteemed panelists here and looking forward to the discussion over the next 30 or 40 minutes. We're joined today by Rob Brown, the CTO of USCIS, Ty Schneider, who's a systems engineer for the technology and platform systems portfolio within the Department of Veterans Affairs, and Colonel Charles DeStefani of the Deputy Chief Data Officer for U.S. Air Force. And thank you, Amy, for setting the stage so well with Nicholas and Karen. Excited to get started here. So let's just go ahead and dive into it. We heard a little bit about some of the Air Force's efforts within DevSecOps. And so, Rob, I wanted to go over to you and hear a little bit about USCIS's adoption of DevSecOps and some successes or challenges that you could share with us.
Sure, happy to. Thanks for having me. Thanks, Mark. Fellow panelists, we've actually had a luxury of being sort of a fee-funded out of a lot of congressional appropriation kind of challenges, which has provided us a very wonderful luxury of being able to probably move a little bit faster than other folks and some of our other DHS brethren. So some of those opportunities have been to do a lot of experimentation, as well as do a lot of movement into the cloud pretty early and often. And we actually started this journey back in 18 or probably 16, I guess, and really started moving 18. Our current state from all applications in the actual cloud is close to 85, probably almost 90% of all USCIS applications. Pretty much cloud. I wouldn't say they're cloud native, but refactoring towards that goal. From a DevSecOps perspective, I mean, the reason I bring cloud up is that was the enabler. That's the keystone to get moving. When we started, really, we opened up the aperture for a lot of our dev teams and infrastructure engineers to really be, I don't want to use the term rogue loosely, but it's sort of rogue, and the ability for them to learn effectively, understand what the cloud had to offer. And then we started to layer in a pretty structured approach, and even more so as of late, a lot of standards and starting to apply governance. And then understanding, again, truly from a DevSecOps perspective, the platforms we could start to leverage across multiple development teams, either CI/CD Jenkins, for example, to just version control, GitHub, for example. And we started to fill some of those gaps across the board. And to a point now where from an IDE, where we've baked a lot of, again, the security, a lot of the sort of sanity and linting that can happen in the IDE, all the way to the deployment endpoints. At this stage, a lot of our applications are not monolithic. They really are based on sort of domains and microservices leveraging eventing, meaning that we actually have most of these apps in Kubernetes. We've really taken on the role and the sort of the outcome and pushing our dev teams to empower themselves as well as everybody else, a true GitOps type of that to me is sort of our next evolution. We've had some successes here as of late, and we continue to see more and more teams start to take on that sort of pipeline approach, that common set of tools, all of which they can contribute to, some of which from a security perspective, it's again, feedback, API driven, that they can really be either autonomous or semi-autonomous in how they move forward. And working with a security group, essentially, we're almost complete with this, I would say, mapping out so that it's not just applications, it truly is full IDE all the way to that deployment endpoint, a really continuous authorization for all teams to take advantage of. Meaning that the amount of controls they would have is in, maybe 20 to 50 as opposed to the 200 plus. So that there's lots of battle scars in that journey. And hopefully we can talk a little bit more about what that actually means and how other folks can learn from those scars.
Thank you, Rob. I appreciate that. That's definitely very impressive. 90% of the applications already moved into leveraging the methodology. Ty, I know that the VA's pretty aggressively shifted over to DevSecOps mentality over the last 2 years. Can you talk a little bit about what support you got from leadership and senior executives and how that's played a role?
Yes, thanks for having Mark and the whole group for setting this all up. So the support we've gotten from the leaders has been really quite great. The VA traditionally, has had a different mindset on this, and so in moving to this new way of thinking and moving forward with infrastructure as code, and we've gotten a lot of support from all the way up to the executive level, to the director level, to the supervisor, and they really empowered us to move forward and help knock down barriers for us and drive. It really just opened up to the different areas of BA that haven't really been exposed to this so much. So they've really helped us be able to move this more quickly than I think traditionally would have at VA. Just because there's red tape barriers we have to deal with sometimes, and there's always going to be concerns of funding and things of that nature that really, to my surprise and appreciation, they really helped pave that way for us to promote this. And so I've really enjoyed the support of the executive and directors.
That's wonderful. Thank you, Ty. I appreciate that. So we'll shift over to you, Colonel DeStefani. So from a data perspective, we heard from Nicholas earlier, we heard from Karen. Obviously, Air Forces had a tremendous success leading the way within DOD from a DevSecOps perspective. Can you speak to us a little bit about the data considerations and your role in what was shared earlier?
Sure. We've been working closely with Ms. Knausenberger and Mr. Shalane. It's been a wonderful journey. Mr. Shalane started his journey at DISA at the DOD level back in 2015, 2016. So it's been a road we've been on for about 4 years. And from an innovation perspective, when Ms. Knausenberger was the Director of Transformation and Innovation for the Air Force before her current position as the Deputy CIO, she was our approving official to help us move with data to get to artificial intelligence and machine learning capabilities in the cloud as quickly as possible. So we started back in 2018 with an agile mentality, using all of the common tools that we're used to hearing about with Ansible and Jenkins and Artifactory, those types of capabilities, but focused on the data science and data analytics customer more than anything else. So one of the biggest things that makes the Chief Data Office delivery of capability unique from the other software factories like Kessel Run or Space Camp or Kobayashi Maru is the fact that we don't write any of the tools that we deploy. We're deploying other analytics products like Databricks or Tableau or Click or the different tools that people use, Trifacta for curation, visualization. We started with a data science reference architecture that laid out all of the capabilities in a microservices format that would be needed to do data science and do artificial intelligence projects. And then our efforts in the cloud have been to simply make available to the Department of Defense those tools which industry takes for granted and combine those with DOD data sets, which is where the security approval and the authority to operate comes in. And then enabling that for a wide variety of mission sets for space and personnel and logistics and maintenance and transportation. So we are able to put new capabilities out into the cloud within 30 to 45 days, where they used to take 10 months to a year.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. And I mean, we all know we're doing this on a day-to-day basis. That really DevSecOps, it's a large coordination effort, managing large teams and coordinating across large teams. Rob, I wanted to go back to you. If you could talk to us a little bit about maybe some challenges you guys faced as you were making the progress that you did as far as managing large teams and coordination across development teams and security teams, and kind of how you dealt with that.
Sure, absolutely. So starting off in the cloud, again, sort of opening that aperture, letting folks learn, understand, skill up. I would say, and still one of the largest challenges across the board, from just basic infrastructure engineering to even just data science and understanding the tool sets that obfuscate the need for data scientists, is really the skills, the training, and ensuring folks are continuously improving in those various disciplines. It's ongoing, and I can't stress enough that is probably the number one challenge. Outside of that, moving and managing teams, outside of charisma, it's sometimes it's the shiny object, and you can lead folks with the new shiny object you can use, which has been very successful. We've done that with various technologies and sort of doing some changes, Kubernetes being one, just sort of real-time event streaming, and underlying technology like Kafka has been another. Part of it is to help manage those teams and moving into those directions. Again, with that sort of carrot, is also at the same time applying, again, some of those standards and applying certain level of governance, yet still enabling those teams to have control. Just like self-organizing teams, we want those folks to have the ability to self-organize their pipelines to some degree. And so that to me is also very, very important, and has illustrated to be successful in moving forward with organizing large teams so they're not rolling themselves and adopting those new platforms and that technology and gluing it together for them. The other great success that we've had, and large lesson, is when we first stood up Kubernetes, whatever it was, like 4 or 5 years ago, we actually had security write our CloudFormation templates for us. And really the approach was setting up a war room where we worked for about a couple of weeks and then ultimately a full month to actually get our first workload into production on that Kubernetes cluster, was to ensure that we had the right security engineers in the room, and that they were also part of not only just building up that cluster, but also part of that pipeline in delivering those pods to production. That was exceedingly important. And then having that relationship as you start to build out your full pipeline with security is paramount. And ensuring that they have the right skill sets as well, and understand the need for those teams to be able to leverage security tool APIs and receive that feedback. That has also been, again, extremely important in moving forward with moving large teams. But at the end of the day, sometimes you just need to have a mandate. For us, we've managed that through management instructions, just really a policy. And when we first started this initiative, I think back in the day, was really started with GitHub and getting everybody aggregated into one version control system. We had, you name it, we had 6 to 7 to 0 different types of version control. The worst was probably sneaker mail passing, actual CDs to the quality folks. But part of it was really just setting a mandate or a goal, like thou shalt by this date, and having the right sort of engineers, automation engineers, be able to work with some of those teams to really either educate them and or provide automation scripts, pathways for them to move off of their old systems and into a new, and then show them the value and the benefit. Part of that as well in adopting some of the new platforms is ensuring that you've got a good swath of technical folks that you're delivering this to, and ensuring you're getting that upfront feedback in the form of POCs. And probably one of the last areas I think that's very important is treat DevSecOps like you would anything else, and put UX, that experience, at the forefront. That's very, very important.
Excellent. That was very valuable, Rob. Thank you. That's some great nuggets of lessons learned there that I'm sure other agencies and commercial and others can leverage. You mentioned the mandate from above. I mean, that's obviously so critical. Personally, I feel like one of the reasons that Air Force has had so much success is they're structured that way for those mandates to come down and people need to follow it. Ty, I know you're in the VA, and it's a very, very large agency. A lot of different product lines, three separate organizations, one handling health, one benefits, and the other memorials. Talk to us a little bit about your journey there, and more specifically, how could the partners within industry and business help shepherd kind of VA through this process of full DevSecOps adoption?
Yeah, thanks, Mark. So yeah, you're right. The VA is a very big place. We've been trying to support Secretary Wilkie's customer service improvement priority through IT modernization at the VA. And so we really want to provide the best customer service possible to the veterans. But to give you a little bit of scope, the VA, it's equivalent to a Fortune 10 company. We have 400,000 federal employees. We support over 19 million veterans, and then we have over 1,200 healthcare facilities we support as well, along with 140 veteran cemeteries. And so it's a very large place, and so. I'm sorry. So I lost frame on the question. I apologize. You're on mute.
Sorry, I meant navigating through the size and the complexity of large teams and competing priorities.
Oh, that's right. So with the vendor support and such, so vendors are critical to us. Getting through just any day at VA. And so we have a reliance on vendors and business partners. The vendors themselves, I don't deal with them directly, but as far as the interaction with the VA, but we do have offices that handle that. And so I don't stray too much into that side of things. But as far as challenges at VA, and getting this sort of mindset going, there's like I referenced before, there's a lot of older type of thinking with waterfall and such, and that tends to slow things down, drive it's a little bit inefficient, costs more, it puts security kind of on the back burner. And moving into this newer way of thinking with Agile, you're going to get a much more cohesive result. It's going to drive teams together rather than apart. It's going to create, an efficiency throughout the projects and really put security at the forefront. So I kind of think of it like a house. When you have like older style houses, you have all this separation. You have all these walls with every single room and element of the house you have to go through just to get to one place. And with the Agile methodology, you really are more of a open concept type of house. So you're going to have your security, your administration, your development teams all working together. And what happens is you start to see results in the beginning. So you're not waiting on a block of time to see results. So you don't have to wait for this big development push to get something into an environment. And then maybe you see results, and then maybe you scan it at a certain point. It's from the beginning, the development and the administration and security are all together. And so you see feedback immediately from that first push from development. You get feedback as to your infrastructure, you get feedback as to into security of the application and how you need to proceed going forward. And that also provides feedback to the business as well. So they can get a pulse of where you're at, how things are going. And so just facilitating that mindset really to the different business partners and vendors that we work with day to day getting them to see that moving away from that older approach is really the way to go is, I would say, one of the bigger challenges we face at VA, because it's really a section by section movement. It's not that we can just do it in one broad swath approach, because there's a lot of different pockets at VA that we have to go into and discuss with. So it really is something that we keep having to reiterate on and show the benefits of that to them to get them to move forward and taking on the challenges of modernizing an application, because it really, modernization, it's a journey. It is not it's not just like, oh, let's just do this. And so it really is something you have to think about and put a lot of effort into to get where you want to be. Containerization, it really it has a lot of benefits, provides a lot of scale, but sometimes that application is pretty far from getting to that point. And so you've got to make a certain level of commitment, and part of that mindset and culture shift is getting them to commit to that modernization effort.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's obviously a very large organizational change management effort, and really culture change is key to all of this, for sure. Let's shift over to you, Colonel DeStefani. So DOD recently released a defense data strategy guidance, and obviously that's a very large coordination effort. I wonder if you can just kind of speak to the collaborative approach and how that impacts what's going on in the Air Force regarding DevSecOps.
Well, the release of the DOD data strategy for us was a great relief. It has actually been a work in progress now for over a year. And the 7 goals around data in the data strategy with visible, accessible, understandable, linked, and trustworthy, interoperable, and secure, those were contributed by the Air Force. In fact, our data platform is branded as Vault to represent those concepts as having secure, interoperable, accessible, visible, and linked trusted data. So we are glad to see that effort moving forward at a policy level across the department. Mr. Dave Spirk, the Department of Defense Chief Data Officer, has been in the seat for about 6 months and has already made great strides across the Army, Air Force, Navy, Marine Corps, and Coast Guard with the collaboration and the different working groups focused on talent and culture and interoperability. So it's been a great collaborative effort that is also supportive of work that the Air Force is doing specifically around the Advanced Battle Management System. That ties into the Department of Defense's focus on Joint All-Domain Command and Control. So they're very much, the policy is now catching up to the innovative space and the work that people are trying to do to really give us the capabilities we need to compete at a global scale. Our competitors around the world aren't waiting for us. They're moving out, and it's on us to innovate faster, keep up, and then maintain that position of leadership in a globally competitive environment.
Thank you. Appreciate that. So let's stay on the topic of organizational change management. Rob, can you share, early on, it sounds like you guys obviously have been on this trajectory for a while now. Early on, are there any tips that you have to share just from an organizational change management perspective? As I mentioned before, I think the Air Force and DOD definitely benefits from that command and control from above, whereas other agencies might have different leaders with different priorities, and it might be a little bit more of a challenge. So I wonder if there's any tips that you have to share that you experienced early on in your experience.
Absolutely. Probably with most organizations, military included, a lot of it is just money driven, and that money typically drives silos, and those silos drive, redundancy and just building the same stuff, or at least what I've discovered here is we were building 30 to sometimes maybe even 80% of the same stuff across different stovepipes within the organization. And just looking back, it was all really driven by money. where the money was coming from to a director, and the director would then work with a specific facet or a portfolio team. And then the synergy or the discussions across was either lukewarm to straight up competitive. So, in those sorts of environments, the organizational change is very important, especially when, if you need to be reporting on what you're spending, and just start to drive efficiencies, especially from a DevSecOps perspective and just the cultural perspective. I'd rather not go all the way up a chain and, across and down. Leveraging tools like Slack and such provide the capability to just go straight horizontal. That was a good tip at the beginning to start to break some of those working level communication challenges, and start to break away from that Conway's law of, we keep building all these stovepipes based upon the communication patterns that exist. So highly recommend that working level collaboration and taking on the approach of, leading from the rear, or those sort of mentalities or constructs where, if you can and you can afford it and it works within your organization, lead from the back of the room, and provide more mentorship and coaching as opposed to that command and control. And enable your teams to be more, again, self-organizing based upon something, though. And sometimes that something is you need to show these folks what truly the mission is and what you're doing, how what you're building is operationally affects people, and for good or bad. Sometimes you need to really dive into some of those incident reports across multiple teams, so that they can actually see what is happening with the mission, what's happening with the business, how it affects people. I think those are other very key elements to make it real. A lot of times, in IT, we sometimes are, the guys in the basement with tinfoil hats on, turning screws, and we neglect to see what's actually happening. So it's our having that mentality, it's our responsibility. This is part of the coaching of the teams and the organization to ensure that we understand what we're building, and we understand ideally almost as good as the individuals, the product owners, the SMEs, and not relying 100% on them. Take the initiative to learn yourself. That has also provided some great organizational challenges. Challenges being abated is just sort of pushing that sort of mentality to a lot of our development teams and other engineers. Another sort of technique that we've used to manage some of the organizational change, not only internally within OIT, but also across all of CIS, and abate that sort of stovepipe structure is to, again, use this reverse Conway's law, and using architectural constructs that are based upon business functions as opposed to being driven by money, where we can aggregate on those business functional domains, build to those domains, align the right people and groups and portfolios to those domains, and then transcend digital products across those different service domains or service areas. That's also something we've been experimenting with and have had some success over the past few years. If you think about, again, taking the architecture, how we actually start to deliver things, having that product first approach, not a program or really necessarily a portfolio, and really thinking about delivery of digital products that, again, transcends these domains, has been successful to a point, again, where we're starting to see shifts in how the business is starting to align themselves across different similar adjudicative directorates, and thinking in the same line, which I think is very telling, and again, from our perspective, makes our life easier. We've got all of these different groups. We're trying to sort of play catch with them all, different business groups. We sometimes become marriage counselors between different business directorates, and that's not our job. So another area that has been very helpful in organizing at least the OIT change, and sort of trying to draw this back to infrastructure and infrastructure as code, is, again, reducing that cognitive load on the development team and ensuring that we leverage those sort of PaaS tool sets, platforms, or having the right group that can manage those PaaS tool sets. Again, ideally in an autonomous way for those folks using it, but minimizing the total number of DevSecOps, DevOps, whatever you want to call them, teams, so that they have the trust and confidence in those platforms to deliver that service. That's also been a very large shift. And thinking also about delivery teams, and it is a team, right? It's a team that may, and I'm sort of ripping this off from Skelton and team topologies, but having that group that works on the hard stuff, and maybe it's the integration stuff, another group that's just cranking out code that's just you're literally trying to deliver what the businesses ask them to deliver, and then having that facilitation team that can work with the business, work with the other domains, and start to harmonize across that digital product delivery flow.
Excellent. And thank you for bringing it back to infrastructure. We got so caught up. We've covered a lot of different areas on DevSecOps. We've talked about security a little bit, organizational change management and coordination, but the infrastructure piece. So Ty, I know within the VA there is just a wide variety of systems that are hosted on different platforms. I know you have everything from there's a VA enterprise cloud now that's running off Azure and AWS. But I know there's plenty of systems that are still hosted on-prem and even some mainframe that still exists within VA. Can you just talk about that kind of wide range of infrastructure and kind of what challenges that brings to wider DevSecOps adoption across the agency?
Yeah, certainly. Thanks, Mark. So yeah, you're right. We have applications sitting on all different variety of platforms, from VMs to mainframes to older physical servers to you name it, it's there. We have cloud as well, but so we've been looking into a platform as a service type of setup so that we can bring in those type of applications in a modernized fashion. So, getting people to modernize and move towards containerization and towards microservices and things, it'll allow us to bring them on to a common platform, and that will increase our ability to serve them so much better. So, I mean, when we talk about platform as a service, it really will enable you to make use of scale. With VA, there's spikes in demand. You want to be able to meet those demands. So it really, with containerization, you can quickly scale up, scale down based on what's going on in real time and do it very quickly. We've been looking at the Kubernetes-based platforms, and with Kubernetes, it really seems to be the industry leader in container orchestration, and so its ability to scale up, scale down, and manage workload in a declarative fashion really is something that's appealing to us. And so we've been focused on, anything we're looking at needs to have that. And then we also are focused on enterprise support. So throughout our journey, we've dealt with different pockets of the VA of innovation. And one thing we've learned is that it's if you have the enterprise support backing, you're going to have a much more comprehensive and effective solution rather than maybe an open source method where you cobble together various things that work together, and it provides provides a solution, but it's really not meant to scale enterprise wide. We are really wanting to provide that enterprise level of scaling, and so when we look at these platforms of service or platform as a service, we're wanting to have platforms that will not only operate on-prem, but also operate in the major cloud spaces. And we're wanting to have a single point of control for deploying across those spaces. So if someone works better on-prem, great, we can accommodate that. They work better in AWS or Google or Azure, any of those major spaces, we can accommodate all those things. So we aren't focused on one particular vendor. We are just focused on being able to provide the major service. So another thing that we're looking to do is, help support continuous ATO within those applications. So a lot of times you have all these singular ATOs for all these different applications. Well, when you move in platform as a service, you get a lot of commonality on the infrastructure. And so that takes away a lot of the need for a lot of the documentation on the back end to maintain those ATOs. And so we're really looking to help provide that and help them to, not as near as much paperwork and admin work behind the scenes to support them. And then, you also gain things like immutable infrastructure. So, with traditional ways of doing things with servers and such, your infrastructure, it can be modified at any time. I mean, I'm sure anyone who's been in IT has dealt with, what changed that caused that outage, and so that happens. And, we want to go away from that. We want to provide something that is, really durable, that cannot be easily, modified to affect production. So, when you deal with immutable infrastructure and where it can't be changed unless it's redeployed, you really provide a level of stability that it's hard to match in any other platform. And so we really have focused on that as well. And so that's really been where we've been looking at the VA with platform as a service.
Great. Thank you, Ty. Colonel, I wonder, I know that in the Air Force, the majority of the systems DOD hosted in DISA for the most part. Can you talk a little bit about that coordination effort and getting DISA and other organizations within DOD to kind of move at the pace of the Air Force to synchronize and be able to really move the DevSecOps initiatives forward?
Well, that's actually an excellent question, because I'm a reservist on active duty orders right now with the Chief Data Office and have been for a couple of years. But my assignment in the reserves is actually the assistant director for DISA's Emerging Technology Division. So I work with Steve Wallace and by definition have a foot in both camps and try to make sure that what I bring forward as a technology solution representing the Air Force Chief Data Office is in alignment with the work Nick Shalane did with DevSecOps at DOD before he came to the Air Force. So the personal relationships that we have been very helpful in making sure that those connections are there for implementing things like zero trust technologies or commercial solutions for classified workstations. So making those connections, and also the working groups that we have. The one we participate in specifically, I mentioned before, is the Department of Defense Chief Data Office Council. So we can coordinate with our Army and Navy brethren on a very informal basis. We don't have to wait for the monthly meeting to have a conversation. If there's something that they're doing or we hear about that's associated with JADC2, we can pick up the phone or get on a video call and say, how does this Army Futures Command effort affect what the Air Force is doing in the advanced battle management architecture? And the ability to have those conversations and have those open doors, if you will, at the executive level and at the senior technical working level has been very beneficial, I think, to really keep us on the same page as we try to unify the efforts across the Department of Defense, especially as it comes to implementing DevSecOps to increase velocity and lower risk around the delivery of data services.
Wow, that's amazing. How valuable to have you be able to represent both camps, and that's obviously the Air Force is benefiting from that. So that's great. This has been a really, really great discussion. I've certainly learned a lot myself from a lessons learned perspective. Thank you, Rob Brown. Thank you, Ty. Thank you, Colonel. This has been a very informative discussion, and we appreciate your time talking to us today about DevSecOps. We, of course, wish you all the success and continual getting adoption and buy-in within your agencies, and like to see this obviously spread across the federal government and benefit the veterans, benefit the government and the taxpayer ultimately at the end. And so that is going to conclude our panel on infrastructure as a code. So thank you for your time this morning. Next, we are going to shift over to Andrew Underhill, who's the Chief Technology Officer for Government CIO. And he's going to lead a discussion on artificial intelligence for IT operations and data analytics.